everybody, I am Andrea Annette, and welcome to this week's session of Building Community. Today, I have a great guest with me, Duncan Bhaskaran Brown. He is an author, a speaker, a coach, and just an all-around great guy. So I met him at a round table with Alana Lopari, and I just really took a liking to him. And I don't like many people. Shh. So please help me welcome Duncan. Hi, Duncan. How are you?
I'm very good after that introduction. I'm on cloud nine. Thank you very much.
Well, I was looking at your books, Real Men Don't Quit and Get Overindulge. That's pretty cool. The names of the books alone make you want to read them.
Yeah, so I don't. I like to think the content lives up to the billing, but no, I just yeah. So I like to think the names are good. I like to think the content inside lives up to them. I can't entirely take credit for Get Over Indulgence. That was my friend John who came up with that. But no, I'm proud of both of them. You know, they've helped a lot of people, and that's all they were really meant to do. So they've achieved a lot that way.
So tell me a little bit about your story because you changed your life 20 years ago. So I'm a friend of Bill's, so I don't know if you know what I mean by that. So anyone who's not an alcoholic probably wouldn't. But Bill W. and I go back a very long way. I started with him when I was 13. So I really appreciated when I heard what you were doing with these people, and it just really made me feel good to know that there's someone out there helping people in a real way because some people don't overindulge. Some people do know when to stop, but sometimes it really can get in the way with life and life on life's terms.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I one of the things I do like to stress is there are a lot of different approaches to recovering from whatever you're overindulging in, and it's always good to meet a friend of Bill's. Any friend of Bill's is a friend of mine. That's not the path I took, but it you can't argue with the fact that it saved the life of a few of my friends. So yeah, there like I say, there are a lot of ways to get free. The important thing, of course, is to do it, not how you do it. And I think you are right that there are some people that have a bit more of a kind of take it or leave it attitude with alcohol, with food, and that's great and everything. But I think we live in a society that is just dripping with overstimulation these days. There are so many potential rabbit holes to fall down. I think it's becoming increasingly difficult to have this sort of normal relationship with indulgence and just to enjoy things, every now and again, rather than just getting sucked into doing them all of the time.
I agree. And I think that people are used to having things easily accessible to them. And then it's very easy. There's a lot of stress for a lot of people in life today. I think people became more aware of it post-COVID. And I think people are still recovering from that. I think that had a very bad emotional impact on people because people were very isolated, which can lead to more stress for a lot of people. And I think that stress, people look for ways to reduce stress. And for some people, it's a drink, overeating, or, sometimes people can't deal with their emotions, so they find outlets. So it's good to have the things that you have in place to help people deal with these different issues in life because you do help people with stress and managing work-life balance. That's part of what you do because basically if they're not overindulging, they're showing up on at a better quality level for the people in their lives. They're better employees, they're better spouses, they're better friends, and they're certainly better for themselves. So Tell me a little bit more about your work.
So I think you kind of hit on it there, really. I mean, some people think that what I do is help people to stop drinking, but that really isn't it. What I do is I help people to start living. And you're absolutely right that alcohol in particular, but many behaviors are this sort of like ill-suited response to stress. Like we think it deals with our stress, and honestly, if you drink anywhere near regularly and you have a couple of sips of alcohol, you will feel less stressed than you did the moment before. But the problem with alcohol is each unit of alcohol increases your cortisol levels by 3%.
Mm.
And I'm sure all of your listeners are aware that cortisol is the stress hormone. So that thing you believe that is actually going to help you deal with your stress, you only believe that because it makes you feel better very temporarily, very like in the moment when you first drink it. In the long term, the matter of hours rather than the matter of minutes, it is going to increase your level of stress and give you a whole load of other problems. So I don't just sort of get them out of that trap. We then look at a lot of other things that they could do, because it's not simply about removing bad habits. It's often about building good habits on the top of the empty ground.
I believe in that wholeheartedly because there's a lot of different analogies with habits and how long they take to reduce or eliminate, but you do essentially replace bad with good. You do a swap.
Well, yeah,
So
I mean that's the idea. That's the dream scenario. But I mean, I certainly uh, didn't do that initially, and I'm not alone in that. What a lot of people find when they stop drinking that they've got a bit of a sugar urge. That's because there is an absolute ton of sugar in alcohol. So if you stop drinking alcohol, you reduce your sugar intake. So for a lot of people, they suddenly develop a sweet tooth almost from nowhere. And that happened to me. And I sort of said to myself, oh, well, now I've stopped drinking, I can eat whatever I like. Turned out that that wasn't quite true. And I got to the point where I was just eating a lot of cookies and a lot of ice cream. And I looked down at this packet of, you know, triple chocolate chip cookies. And I just thought, I'm not enjoying this. This is actually making me feel bad. Like it's making me feel ill. It's making me feel like a terrible human being. And actually, you know what? I'm eating the way I used to drink.
mm,
So then I removed that habit and started replacing it with some better ones, sorted out my diet. And that was really, that was absolutely the key for me, that understanding that what I had done when I removed alcohol was simply replace it with something else that was also bad. So the work I do with people these days is about being aware of that and being mindful of that, because a lot of people fall into that trap.
I see it all the time, and especially in AA, a lot of people put on a lot of weight when when they stop drinking because they do substitute it, and it is the sugar, certainly. But I think that people, a lot of times when people are suffering with addiction, and I'm not speaking for everyone because I certainly don't know everyone, but it's because they have difficulty dealing with those feelings, those emotions. So they don't know what to do with their hands. Maybe it started when they were a child, they were uncomfortable, at a party, and they said this will relax them, and it just became very cyclical in their life that when things happened that made them uncomfortable, that drink was their source of comfort. So it is about tapping into those emotions and why they started to drink. For me, I didn't want to feel, and then I did. I drank to forget, and then I drank to remember what it was like to feel. And then I said, okay, we're just gonna feel now. Um, and it was difficult, but my life changed. I mean, certainly there are some of us that are more manageable than others, but um, that could be just justification when you're in that situation. I mean, some people, um are definitely alcoholic and go to work and live productive lives, and there is others that are not, and that's why a lot of people, when you say alcoholic, they refer to that Bowery drunk, and many people are not that typical Bowery drunk. So um I think it's a process of looking in and really um that inner work for all of it,
Yeah,
not go ahead.
I think you're absolutely right. And so we did some research not so long ago, and we just asked people why they started drinking. And you can kind of group them into three main reasons. There was a lot of unprocessed childhood trauma, which no doubt comes as no major shock to you. There's quite a lot of people who felt that their drinking had escalated at a point in their adult life when something traumatic had happened to them, such as grief or breakdown of a relationship, loss of a job, car accident, something like that. So there was the childhood trauma, there was the adult trauma, and then there was a lot of people who talked about, like you said, feeling uncomfortable at a party, not quite finding where they fitted in, or maybe being involved in an industry or a company where there was an awful lot of drinking going on. So of those sort of three groups, the common denominator really is emotions. And a lot of people drink to suppress emotions, to attempt to numb themselves. And therefore, when you stop drinking, you suddenly have to face these emotions. And, sometimes that happens in an absolute rush, and you are kind of really confronted with them. And that's why for some people the you know sobriety and therapy absolutely have to go hand in hand. But even if that isn't the case, we all have to learn to find a better way to deal with our emotions and stand in front of them rather than hide away from them. And that's why the research that we've done strongly indicates that emotional intelligence is actually one of the factors that aids in recovery, and it's very protective in sobriety. So that whole self-awareness piece and how that relates to emotional regulation and emotional intelligence, it's such a key part of recovery.
I agree. So what are some of them? Do you have certain modalities that you use with people that you find work better?
Yeah, so I kind of come from a cognitive realignment or a cognitive reframing background, which is, in essence, I try and get to grips with people's beliefs. So everybody believes something about alcohol. I mean, even people that don't drink think it helps you deal with stress, for example. Um, so we get to grips with all of those beliefs because, you know, beliefs underpin your actions. And in fact, the research is very clear on this. It's not my belief that you drink alcohol because of what you believe. That's what the research says. The more positive beliefs you have about alcohol, the more you're going to drink. Those two things are very, very firmly correlated. So we start off with beliefs, we get to grips with those. Once you've kind of like understood all of those beliefs, got rid of some of them, because most of them aren't going to be true, and even if they are true, they're probably not serving you, probably not helping you live the life you want to live. So once you've got rid of those, then we work on what could be called thought management, which is just the process of dealing with, well, some people would use the word triggers or cravings, but at the end of the day, they're really just thoughts, and we help people to deal with the thoughts. And what I find is once people have dealt with the beliefs and once they've dealt with the thoughts, then the actions just follow along naturally. So that's kind of like my background. That's my training. Though I am probably by nature and certainly by qualifications a coach. So I take a slightly different approach. I generally tend to be led by the client rather than outlining some major program that they're going to have to follow step by step. I let them be a bit more directive, and then kick them in the bum when they're being a bit silly or lazy.
Well, you have to, because everybody's situation is different too. So, I mean, no two clients that you meet ideally are the same, even though they may be presenting with the same issue, the traumas or the situations that got them there were entirely different. So their beliefs and their thoughts are going to be very different in retrospect to one another, you know? So I get that, but I love what you're out there doing. I think it's really cool. You help professionals? Because I would think in high stress jobs you'd be in real demand. So
Yeah, yeah, primarily the people that I work with are professionals. And, I think you were sort of alluding to it. The idea about people who have a problem with drinking is all about, lost your house, lost your job, lost your car, lost your wife, absolutely down and out. But the fact of the matter is 80% of problem drinkers have a job. And many of them are very successful. That's another misunderstanding. People think that alcohol is a problem of poverty. It absolutely is not. It is a problem of wealth. The more you earn, the more you drink. Taken to the point that 47% of high earning graduates drank yesterday. So, and like what do high earning graduates do? They're lawyers and they're doctors, and they're not the kind of people you want turning up with a hangover, but they have some very, difficult calls to make. They have a lot of stress in their life. They've grown up in a society that told them that alcohol is a great way of dealing with your stress. They get caught in the trap. They end up spinning around the cycle. And hopefully they come to me before it gets too late.
do you speak in professional organizations? I think there'd be a big call for that because even at a lot of gatherings, I mean, I'm a professional. I've always been a professional, and a lot of these gatherings are highly populated with alcohol, you know, and it's encouraged to come and in wines and, collaborate with, your employees or employers. And um, I've always kind of not gone to them. And the ones I went to, people didn't understand why I wasn't drinking. I said, because I choose not to today.
Yeah,
I
this will end
break
badly.
out in a disease of the attitudes. Leave me alone.
Yeah. Yeah, so I cannot fault your logic at all. And actually, one of the main things that I try and do these days is work with organizations and companies to increase alcohol awareness. So you are absolutely bang on, spot on, right about how needed it is. It is often quite a hard sell because a lot of companies they just don't want to go there, and that is changing. So what I've noticed is that companies are now much more clued up about well-being. They've worked out that if their staff are happy and healthy, they're more productive. If they're happy and healthy, they're paying less in medical insurance. If they're happy and healthy, then their staff are staying, and that's reducing recruitment costs. And actually, there is a significant proportion of people who don't drink, who never drink. And if your culture is all around alcohol, they aren't coming to work for your company. So actually, in terms of diversity and recruiting the top talent, it's often becoming a bit of an issue if you've got a very, very alcohol focused culture. So yeah, I think the attitude is changing and they're warming up, and basically because they've become so much more aware of well-being, there are a few people who are interested in talking about alcohol. Sadly, the majority of people who talk about well-being just don't go there. They're scared of it for whatever reason. So they talk about doing yoga and they talk about getting a really big water bottle and some blackout blinds. And frankly, I do yoga. I have a really big water bottle and I have blackout blinds, but that only works for me because I don't drink. If you're drinking even, I don't know, 2 or 3 glasses of wine 3 or 4 times a week, don't bother with yoga. Don't buy yourself blackout blinds. Don't drink a lot of water. That's not gonna cut it. You need to get to grips with that drinking first.
I agree too. A true story. I was working with a client and she just wasn't getting results, and I didn't understand why not. So we were working together. She was following everything I was telling her to do. And I said, listen, this is a learning experience for me as well. I said, if you're not getting results, I have to know what I'm doing that's not serving you because I can grow as a person also. I said, so I have to ask you, you're doing everything right. What is the biggest problem in this program or work? I said, what are you having the most difficulty with? And she said, my drinking. And I said, excuse me? I said, so you're doing all these things right? And then on the weekends, she goes, no, I drink every day. So I said, ah, I said, well, I can help you with that too. I said, but this would have helped me if I knew this 2 months ago because it would have been a different scenario. But I guess people need to warm up to you and trust you. But I was able to move her to those results based on knowing what we had to really deal with. That the underlying problem was much deeper. It was a problem dealing with those emotions and, like you said, past trauma. So, if you don't deal with those underlying issues, they will resurface.
Yeah, absolutely. And that story is not unique. I hear it quite a lot from personal trainers, from business coaches. Uh, you know, and I know a lot of coaches, and the more enlightened ones will kind of like come and ask me about it, and they will be kind of aware that something is not quite right, and they're wanting some advice on how to approach it. Whereas I think there are a lot of them out there, and I've spoken to quite a few coaches who are just like, no, it's not, it's not what I do. I'm a business coach. I'm an executive coach. I'm a leadership coach. I don't talk to people about their drinking or their diet or anything like that. And it's like, okay, that's fine, but you are not going to get results for for people
It
um,
all ties
if
into
you're
it.
not kind of even prepared to signpost them somewhere to deal with it. But yeah, I mean, it really does get in the way, and yeah, absolutely. You know, running is generally quite good for you, but you can't outrun heavy drinking. There's no way you can turn your health around by just doing a marathon like every day. It's like it's just not going to work. You need to address the underlying problem. There's something that I think a lot of people miss, that there is this hierarchy of well-being, and if well, if you imagine it like a pyramid, you know, the you don't have to be an Egyptologist to know that they didn't start building the pyramids at the top, did they? They built the base at the bottom, and well-being is exactly the same. It's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you don't have that basic level of
Love and belonging.
survival, like you don't have the food and the water, then everything else is detail. And in the same way, if you're drinking, if you're smoking, if you're taking drugs, uh, often people can develop significant problems with the internet or gaming or pornography or gambling. So unless you deal with those kind of things, any of the bricks further up the stack, it's just it's not going to have the effect. You're not going to see any difference, and that's very, very dangerous, because that makes you believe that change doesn't work, that you do something that you believe should be positive and you don't get any positive results from it. So you just say, oh, I might as well give up. I'll sit back, stick the TV on, grab a bag of chips, and drink that beer.
But I think balance is key too. So I just want to go back to what you were saying about the business coach not wanting to deal with that. I can't imagine someone doing well in their business when they have an alcohol crutch on their shoulder because you can only excel so much when you're carrying that weight. Because if you're drinking, something is causing some kind of stress in your life, and the alcohol certainly is, as we discussed previously. So, unless you get to what that is, then you're really not going to propel yourself forward. It is going to stymie you because they say that you mentally stop progressing at the age you start drinking. So if you've been drinking since you're 12 or 13 years old, and now you're 45 trying to take a business course and you still haven't handled this over here. You got a 14-year-old trying to step into a business suit. It's not going to work, because at the end of the day, he doesn't have functionality. He's not able to deal with those emotions that he's picking up the drink for, because he's not able to use that emotional intelligence you spoke of earlier, because he's seeing that maybe he's not in a good job as the problem. And if he has a better job, is that going to change him wanting to drink? So sometimes people allude that if I had a better life, if I had the perfect marriage, if I had better friends, then I wouldn't be drinking. But those are just excuses we make because we don't want to put down the alcohol.
Yeah, and I think it's very interesting. I mean, because personally, I had quite a lot of success when I was drinking. It looked very good from the outside. It's just I was miserable and I wasn't really doing anything that I found meaningful or fulfilling. But I was, according to the dictionary definition, I was quite successful. And there are a lot of successful people that drink pretty heavily. I mean, take F. Scott Fitzgerald, for example, wrote one or two decent novels. And people will go, well, that means it can't have had that much of an effect on him. But it did, because he died in his mid 40s and he was miserable and he never had a proper relationship. And actually, if you look at most authors, they do their best work the older they get. So just been reading a very interesting book about Joan Didion, who, her most successful, her most revered writing was done in her late 60s. If F. Scott Fitzgerald had actually not killed himself with alcohol, what would he have written? It's
Yeah.
not that he wasn't successful, it's that he just could have done so much more. And to boot, he could have actually had a sensible relationship with women and perhaps not, been miserable the whole time.
Why do you think that people that have problems with alcohol have such difficulty with intimacy and relationships?
That is an excellent question, and one that I fully intend to dig my teeth into. So I think there's a lot of stuff that you could talk about. I think the principal problem is that any relationship you have with another person is simply a relationship of is simply a reflection of the relationship that you have with yourself,
Mm.
which is an idea which I stole from a great guy called R. Michael Anderson, who is a leadership guru. I think, I don't think he'd mind me calling him that, and he doesn't drink. Um, but I think it's absolutely, if you cannot love yourself, then you are in trouble in trying to love another person. If you cannot understand yourself, then there is no way you will ever be able to understand another person. Not really, not truly, not deeply. So I think that is one of the greatest gifts that you can get by getting sober, is the self-awareness that it gives you, and then you can use that self-awareness to create genuine relationships with other people. And what gets mentioned an awful lot at this point is a quote from Johann Hari, when he said the opposite of addiction is not abstinence, the opposite of addiction is connection. And he's absolutely right. Community and connection and other people are such an important part of it. And that's one of the reasons why lockdowns were so damaging, because of the isolation that they caused, meaning people were retreating more into destructive behaviors like alcohol. But connection does not just mean connection to other people. It actually starts with connection to yourself. And I would go as far as to say it then is going to bleed into things like connection with your meaning and your purpose. Whether you consider that to be a more spiritual connection, maybe even a connection with God, but that's such an important part. And doing that internal work is what allows you to, create the sort of meaningful, deep connections with other people.
I agree. I agree. I think that there are some people that don't understand what you said, that you can't truly love someone else until you love yourself. And they find themselves miserable in marriages because they never took that time to do that inner work, that self-reflection. And then you have those people that their marriage is their life. They're like, it's people should be an extension of you. It's not, they don't complete you. You complete yourself. They may be an extension in your life, but they should not be your life. And a lot of people get lost in that. And I remember many years ago, my first marriage was abusive verbally, and I made a commitment to myself, and he was an alcoholic also. We were high school sweethearts, and I made a commitment to myself that I was going to spend that time after that ended to get to know myself. That I had always been in a relationship, but I really did not know what it was that I wanted, what made me happy, and what I liked. And that I was kind of assimilating into other people. But I really wasn't capable of that love you spoke of because I really didn't like myself. Otherwise, I wouldn't have accepted that. I was volunteering for that kind of behavior, you know? So I do get that. So
Yeah, just to go a little bit Carl Jung on everybody. I I like what he talks about in terms of, you know, archetypally male characteristics and archetypally female characteristics, and it is a generalization, so I don't wish to paint the entire world in such a simple way, but in general, I think most people can recognize strength and order as being quite masculine traits and feeling and understanding as being quite feminine traits. And that is why pretty much every love story that you ever read, you know, one of the protagonists starts off being strong in strength and order, and the other one starts off being strong in feeling and understanding. And it is them coming together and sort of tempering their own abilities and giving each other what the other person lacks that makes them a complete person. And I think, you know, forming a relationship with somebody who embodies the things that you lack can help you learn to do them, but it is not going to just complete you in a very simple way. You still actually have to listen to them and pay attention and learn what you can from them. So I think that idea of becoming completely aware of yourself, maybe once you are aware enough, the next stage is going to become fully aware and a bit more complete by learning something very deeply from another human being.
I love that. So what's next for you, Duncan?
So at the moment, we're really doing an awful lot of work to try and work with organizations and businesses to find a way to help them become more alcohol aware, to help them, help their staff to become more productive and engaged, to reduce their recruitment and retention bills, to just create a more open, inclusive, and diverse culture that isn't just totally and utterly centered around alcohol. And as I'm kind of mentioned earlier, that is often an uphill struggle. A lot of people just, they're not prepared to talk about it, but thankfully there are more and more people who are starting to become aware of the values of sobriety, or being sober curious, or just actually really drinking at a low risk level, and not going completely crazy. And we met a few enlightened people who have helped us sort of share our message. And I think a really important thing to note is that 72% of people that drink alcohol would like to drink less. And all I would like is the opportunity to help them do that.
I think that's a beautiful thing. I think you should look into the health field. I think that's a very large organization, and and I think they would help it because I think there is a propensity to lean towards addiction in that, and Yeah. So, and I think those people would be very open to that conversation. Like Department of Health and mental hygiene, because it really is a mental health issue. A lot of people are dealing with their stresses in whatever way they can, and alcohol is certainly a cheaper way than other things that people could be doing. And I think that people do, it's not even the retention. I think that there's a lot of people calling out sick, hungover, missing time from work. And I think you could serve a lot of different organizations.
Yeah, absenteeism and burnout is another huge issue. But it's interesting you mentioned the healthcare sector because I did do a little bit of work back in the day for the NHS, and that's the National Health Service in Britain. And I was very aware that, they breaks, it was often cigarettes. There was an awful lot of sugar kicking around. The way anybody was rewarded was always with food and never healthy food, always bad food. And yeah, there was a lot of drinking at the end of the shift. And I know that is purely anecdotal, but I'm pretty sure the data supports it. That actually, if you work in the healthcare setting, you're more likely to have a problem with drinking, you're more likely to smoke, you're more likely to have a bad diet. So it does beg the question, why are those the people we talk to when we want some help with drinking, smoking, and changing our diets? They're worse than the general
I know,
population. It's
I
like
know. It's
it's like
become,
taking swimming lessons off a drowning man.
yes, I understand that. And there was a time in my life that I was dealing with a lot of stress and a lot of grief. And I remember standing outside of where I worked, the hospital at the time, smoking a cigarette, hungover. And I said to myself, something's got to change. I said, picture this, me telling them what to do with their life. And I had that like realization all on my own. I'm very good at my job. I'm very good at it. But I think that it's easier to accept that respect. Even I know that when I was trying to lose weight, I certainly wouldn't have went to a coach that was 50 pounds overweight and asked them for advice, because I would look at their reflection and say, well, how are they going to help me? Right. So um so
Yeah, actually,
I didn't want to be
I,
that person.
no, and I've developed it as a bit of a mantra. I think it is probably one of the most useful things that has come out of all of the problems that I've had. Now I'm very upfront with people. Whenever I want some help with anything, the first question is always, how have you solved the problem that I am attempting to solve? And if they have not, then I'll go find somebody else. Because like there are a lot of people who work in smoking cessation that have never smoked. And it's like, well, how do you know? Like, well, how do you know your advice works? It's just because you were told that on a training session, but you don't have any practical proof or experience. In fact, you don't even understand what smoking's like. So why would I be taking advice from you?
Yes, there's a lot of misconceptions out there. I struggle with them every day. When I was on the weight loss journey and I was listening to all the advice flash by me, I said, well, this isn't health. I recently filled out a form for a TEDx talk, true story. And they asked what would I like to speak about that's different. And I said health, because and then I said, because nobody out here is really talking about it. So he must have read that and been like, or who was ever reading this, like, is she serious? There's so much health out there. But I'm not really hearing health. I'm hearing a lot of sick. I think that there's a lot of people with good intentions, but it's creating more sickness. There's more health gurus online today than ever in history, and people are getting progressively sicker. So
Yeah,
and it's because those people didn't know anything about smoking cessation or abstinence or anything like that. And those are the people that are giving that advice. And it's really sad. So I really, really so enjoyed this conversation with you. If you could give the audience one insight, one tip, what would that be?
So I think the most important thing to learn is that behavior change is not actually about changing your behavior. If all you do is change the way you act, you are going to be back where you were fairly quickly. You need to get to grips with what sits underneath the behavior, which is typically um, beliefs and thoughts. And you could go a little bit further down even into identity. That's a very interesting place to be, because if you genuinely see yourself as the kind of person that never smokes, then you won't smoke. It is kind of that simple. So you got to get a bit lower than just trying to stop the behavior and hope that everything catches up, because it very rarely does.
I like that. Wonderful. We are going to leave it on that note. Thank you guys for tuning in to this week's session. And I want to thank our special guest, Duncan, for showing up here. And Duncan, where can they find you if they wanted to get in touch with you?
Well, if your listeners like reading, then I'd love to offer them a free copy of my first book, Get Overindulgence. They can just grab that by putting the words get over and then .uk. Well, don't put the word dot. That wouldn't make any sense, would it? So just type getover.uk into the internet and it will take you to a bit of my website. You can download the PDF or the Kindle version there. And if you don't like reading and you can stand to listen to me for 3 hours and 45 minutes, you can download the audio book there as well. I'll apologize now for the silly voices, but yeah, just put getover.uk into the internet and that'll take you to my website, and you can find out everything that I do there. I'm also pretty busy on social media, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. So yeah, connect with me. Like I hope it comes across, but I love talking about this sort of stuff. And you know, I might not be the right person to help you, but the chances are I know somebody who can. So if you've got a question, please reach out.
Thank you so much, guys. Have a great night.